Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back to the show. We are excited to have Dr. Dwayne B. Thomas joining us here. Excited to have him from Thomas Leadership Solutions. And there's so much to what he does academically with coaching, with sports networking, and all from ACES Network. We're excited that he's here to continue his mission and bring on some of his friends and, of course, talk more about the work that he's doing. So let me start off by introducing from ACES Network, Dr. Thomas. How are you?
Jill, thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to be back and talking with our listeners and to have these esteemed gentlemen who are going to be joining us today. And so so just a little bit about ACES Network. And so we are really focused on how we leverage the power of sports to enrich academic programs, coaching programs, and enrichment programs, primarily for after-school summer programs, and helping with our school districts in terms of students who are considering themselves student athletes, and all our youth development programs. And so I have two brilliant gentlemen that I have invited to come on today to talk with us. Dr. Watkins, expert in higher education administration, and going to be continuing our conversation around building community partnerships and leveraging the resources that are in college, on college and university campuses. And Dr. Houston as well could also talk about those things, but primarily I asked him to come on today to talk about how the things that are happening around politics and politics in our communities, in our cities, in our states, and how we can leverage the resources there and how politics impact the programs and services impacting young people. And so we have a great show on tap for today, and looking forward to these gentlemen sharing their expertise.
Beautiful. So who wants to start next? Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the discussion, if you don't mind.
I guess I can jump off first. Dr. Brian Watkins. I've probably for the last 6-7 years, I've been a chief academic officer at two various institutions in the Chicagoland area, but predominantly all of my career has been in higher ed in the Chicagoland area, mostly in senior administrative roles, working predominantly with adults, as a matter of fact. So I've known Dr. Thomas for many years. He was one of my faculty members and a director of our sports leadership program back in the day at the Dominican University in Illinois. And since then, we've maintained a working relationship and collaborating on various different projects. And so this work is very exciting to bring, as you heard about the ACES Network. It's a network of many professionals from around the country as well as international. And Dr. Houston is one of those individuals also. So excited to be here.
Dr. Houston, thank you. Thank you to have you here as well. Please introduce yourself next.
Good morning. My name is William Houston. I am professor of political science at Prairie View A&M University. I've been in the academic sector for almost more than 2 decades. Before Prairie View, I was at the University of Houston. A lot of what I do is I teach urban government, state and local politics, racism and oppression dynamics, and things that just kind of tie social, cultural, and political issues together in order to better understand the landscape of our American society. I met Dr. Thomas decades ago. I don't want to age us too much at Florida.
I was going to make that joke. I'm glad you did.
We were both doctoral students at Florida State. He was one of my mentors and big brothers, and we've maintained this relationship for, let's just say, a number of years. And and we've all just worked together to make this a better place, a better society, and really understanding where we are as not only educators, but Black men, and just progressing forward.
Beautiful. So we're going to continue our conversation today on building our partnerships in our communities with college, universities, strategic leadership, and of course, I know you mentioned politics as well. So Dr. Watkins, where did you want to start for us today?
Well, I think we'll start with just, how do we access the higher ed community, if you will, and some of the individuals who might be great points of contact, if you will. First, I'd like to start with the president.
Yep.
The president, he or she, is responsible for obviously running the institution, making sure that young minds are developed, but also physically. So it's about curricular and co-curricular activities. The other piece of what the president does, which dovetails perfectly, is that the president is responsible to make sure that the institution is perceived as a good citizen of the community, good neighbor, if you will. And so institutions are always looking for ways to reach out into the community and benefit the community, if you will. And so the president would be a perfect starting point for any kind of programmatic actions that an organization may want to do. And so I would definitely encourage that as the starting point. Certainly, presidents are sometimes difficult to get a hold of. And so then you would look at the next level of administration, the vice presidents, or the position I held as the chief academic officer might be another one. But to understand that with the senior administration, their role is to reach out into the community, to find ways in which the institution can collaborate with the community. And so that would be very important, I would suspect. The other piece is faculty, and Dr. Hostin can certainly echo this. Faculty members, whether full-time tenure track faculty members or adjuncts, faculty members are looking to link the theory in the classroom with what's going on in the workplace, if you will, out in the real world. And so particularly if a faculty member is on the tenure track, they're looking for ways to develop research opportunities. And so these types of programs that Dr. Thomas has developed are perfect to dovetail into these different disciplines. When you're talking about a sports-based youth development, you could see a psychology department, you could see a business department, you could see social work department, education, counseling, et cetera. So many different disciplines can dovetail and work to benefit both the community, but also the students. And so it's about finding the win-win, if you will, what's going to benefit the organization, but also what's going to benefit the institution and the community at large. So I'll stop there for a minute in case anyone wants to chime in.
Well,
No,
Brian, actually, I'd like for you to speak a little bit about, before Terrell comes in, speak a little bit about experiential learning and the connections that we are making and necessary for faculty and staff to be successful on college campuses.
Yes, experiential learning is that piece, if you will, that I had mentioned about bridging that theory with the practice. And so there are opportunities where a student particularly can experience an internship and develop some specific skills, but also receive credit for that. And of course, there's a process that we take the student through where we evaluate the experiences and the knowledge that's gathered and gained, and then a credit can be applied. And so this is an important piece that has been moving, but also continues to move through higher ed, is that we recognize that learning occurs in the classroom, but it also can occur outside of the classroom. And the best way to make the linkage is really to take that theory and put it into practice in some way, shape, or form. And so that's where you have faculty members who are wanting to be out in the community to find out what's going on in the real world and bring that back into the classroom to link with the theory from the scholars who have developed the literature, if you will. So experiential learning is absolute. And so with us, you're looking at the opportunity on campus. You've got students, you've got undergraduate students, you have master's prepared students, and you have doctoral students, all looking for practicums and internships, ways in which they can hone their skills by getting involved with different programming. And so the experiential learning piece is very important and an important outcome for students as they leave higher ed.
Thank you. Joe, I'm going to ask Terrell to come in here to begin to bridge the gap in talking about politics and some of the things that are happening in the community and how the things that Brian just shared how they're impacted by the influences of our political system.
All
I
right.
think a lot of what we're talking about now just fluctuate as the state and local level. One of the things we have to do is create greater unison between state and local level, particularly in states that are conservative, but you have these local jurisdictions that are very liberal. So in some of these spaces, they have these liberal initiatives. We need those mayors and those city council people to really speak out and be advocates for community-based services, community-based institutions and things of that nature, particularly in the city of Houston. There are a number of local people who've created centers. And in these centers, they have things like experiential learning where you go and visit them. They have a bunch of practicums related to things that you want to do in the community and kind of helping students get in that space. Let me give you some examples. A good friend of mine, Tiffany Thomas, who is the council person for District D here, she's doing stuff where she's teaching not only students how to do STEM, how to do programming, how to do robotics, but she's also teaching them how to be electricians, how to be welders, um, how to be mechanics and things of that nature. So we really need to advocate those resources, and they come from top to bottom in terms of how we put those things together. So when we really look at the gap between politics and these community-based things, I just think the resources need to be available. One, we need people on the same page in terms of understanding that our goal is to help the youth. And three, we need programs in place to create residual learning experiences for them. We always want to preach education, 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 but we also have to know that people need particular skills in our society to be successful. There are people that we still need as essential personnel, besides those who we are pushing out into the world to become doctors, lawyers, etc. We have to know that the plumbers, the electricians, and the welders are just as important. So just as a basis for discussion, those are some of the things that I think needs to happen.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Jill, did you have some pieces that you?
Well, moving along, I know you all you mentioned a little about the faculty, you mentioned grants, but as far as the learning and the internships and all that practical experience, how does that all work, right? Because you want to prepare someone to really have their best experience, to do their best they can.
Right.
And I know you were talking about there's so many people, the largest and least expensive members of your workforce, but everybody does matter. And I know you want to talk more about that and the army of
Sure.
students, both the undergrad and graduate levels as well.
Yeah, one of the biggest pieces is that both of these gentlemen and myself have been working on is around grants and writing grants and connecting in our communities. Those grants help us to then be resources throughout the community. So we've got, like I said, we've talked about a number of shows, our community executive leadership program, where we're training executive directors that are working in organizations that are providing, that are bridging the gap between the resources that the municipal leaders have, that the state leaders have, and then pushing those through to the actual programs for the frontline workers that are out there. So we're positioning ourselves to be the lead training group for those types of organizations, primarily around working with nonprofits. And by bringing both of these gentlemen on there, so one being down in the Houston, Texas area, the other one being in the Chicago land area, and myself being in the greater Boston area, that we have a pretty significant reach in terms of where we're doing training, where we're having an impact with the types of folks that are out there looking for the things that we can provide. And so we've come on to this network and build it, and to really to share who we are and what resources we have and how we can tap into where those monies are, primarily in colleges and universities. That's where Dr. Hostin comes in, and also Dr. Watkins, and both of them working on college and university campuses, but also working out in our communities, working with the folks who are leveraging the resources, the municipal leaders who are writing for federal dollars, bringing those federal dollars into the states across the country and across the world. We're working also with some international leaders on some of the programs on how everybody is working around youth everybody has, to keep our young people out of risky behaviors. And so they need to be trained up, whether it's their staff that needs training, whether it's their executive leadership that really is trying to strengthen up the foundation of their organizations. And so that's why I asked these two gentlemen to come on board, why we've had a network for multiple decades of working through these various issues, and why we're, by talking about that network, then the way that we build that out is bringing younger folks in. We've dated ourselves, but we need to bring young folks in who can then take the baton and move it forward, who can take the mantle, can build on the foundation that we've already structured, and make it even better, make it stronger. So we're coming to today and to these programs to let folks know the types of resources that are available, to let them know the types of successes that we've had already throughout the world and the programs that we've led, and to really be able to then pass it on and pass on knowledge, pass on experience to those folks, whether it's through colleges and universities, whether it's through social programs and the like, and giving folks that are really out there grinding resources to help support what they're doing. That's where we're coming from.
Great, and let's just take the time to remind everyone how we can reach out to you. aces-network.com, correct?
That's correct. And also on telephone, 617-610-5785.
Wonderful. And I know if you go to the website, you can find out more about all your programs and your services. And as we continue today, it's great. I get to see you both. I know you're on the website as well. I see you. So
Yeah, we got to get Dr. Huston up on there.
Yeah, he's not there yet. I was looking before I started today, but it's okay. You're with us. That's important. You'll be there. So you're the Executive Vice President of Higher Education Division, just to point out. And then Dr. Thomas, the Founder and Chief Learning Strategist, obviously. All right, perfect. So gentlemen, what else did you want to make sure we cover for today's show?
So you guys also give each of your own contact information as well, please.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, certainly I can be reached through my consulting division at ravenskeep1555@gmail.com. And of course, my phone number is 847-489-3452. So certainly open to conversations.
Great. I could be reached through my website, Hosted Enterprises LLC at gmail.com. You could also reach me at 936-257-2557. Looking forward to hearing from people.
Great.
So Joe, I'd like for us to spend just the last few minutes on some of the program pieces that we have going on.
Sure.
And so we are starting. So we've mentioned it several times. I'm on the campus of Eastern Nazarene College as the program chair for the sports management program, and as well as a senior professor. And one of the things that we're doing is creating what we're calling the Center for Sports-Based Youth Development, and we are working on building the society. And so if there are folks out there that are already doing some of this work, then we are looking to network with you. So please do reach out to us. I'm building up the information. I'm still having students working on our social media page. Obviously, I'm a little bit older, so I'm not the Instagram person or whatever the other Twitter
Snapchat. I don't know them either. I know the basics. I know Facebook and Instagram, but now there's so much more. It's so confusing.
We're looking at all of that and saying we really want to build this thing out to get folks to be able to connect, and then we can connect resources. And so we've got the center that's coming, working on the society pieces. We have trainings that are coming. We have trainings around youth development for staff. And we have a number of people who are calling us because they want our programs on their sites and their centers. And so we're looking for young people, especially college age individuals, to be trained up to then be ready to work on programs for this summer, as well as carrying into the academic school year. And so there's opportunities that are going to be posted up on our website for that as well. And like I said, the biggest piece is being able to build out the network through various connections. And we really are looking forward to folks joining us joining you. Whatever efforts are going on in your communities, we know that we have somebody in our network who's working in a similar capacity, and there may be resources and things that we can share across the board.
Mhm.
And so I think we just have just a few more minutes.
Mhm.
So I'd like these guys to just give some final words about their areas and some of the
Yeah,
things.
we got another 6 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, first I wanted to give maybe a better number to access me at also. It's 847-701-5500. So it's 847-701-5500.
Thank you.
Or 5550, excuse me. But anyway, I think the one piece to hone in on was one of the things that Dr. Thomas had mentioned about grants. So grants are truly important. Obviously, the municipal organizations are looking at writing them, but also colleges and universities are always seeking those. It's the best way to both expand and extend the work of an institution. And so they're always interested in collaborating on grant opportunities. And so I would encourage our organizations to seek out the higher ed institutions and to have these conversations, because grant writing is what they do well, but also they're very much interested in that, and particularly faculty members.
Thank you. T, maybe tie in how some of the major election pieces that are coming up, and how that will impact resources. The way, obviously we're not talking about voting Democrat or Republican, but we're talking about resources in terms of how those are going to impact, regardless of however the elections turn out, there's going to be these things going on. So if you could tap into that a little bit.
I actually was going to say something related to what Dr. Watkins says in terms of visiting these spaces and seeing what their needs are.
Right.
And from that, you can formulate ideals to write grants to work in their favor. Why is that important? Because so many resources have been cut due to local and state decisions. So as it relates to from a very political aspect, once you visit these centers and see what type of resources they need, then you can appropriately write the grants that'll get funded. I think one of the things that we miss a lot of times is that we write these grants and we throw them in the ocean, right? We don't really have any streamlined ideal of how to write them in such a way to get them funded to really help the target audience. So to tie what Dr. Watkins said and Dr. Thomas said, and you need to identify not only the need, but to see where the need is coming from. So I think that's extremely important as we talk about this really holistically. I know a lot of what I'm saying takes actual boots on the ground. So you have to visit these places, but it needs to happen. If you're really going to help the community, you have to see what the community is going through.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. We call that want satisfaction, Jill. We have to find out what the needs are and how do we satisfy those wants. And we're really pushing the envelope, because a lot of this, because of all of those cuts, a lot of it has happened in the back rooms. And so we're looking to bring it out to the forefront of everything that's going on in our communities. We need parents and caregivers to really step up and understand. Part of why we're providing this information is so that they can then step up and go to the city council meetings, go to the meetings that are happening across their state, where they're talking about these resource shortages, and where they're also talking about where monies are being targeted and what programs are being targeted and what people are running those programs. And so, so it helps to have, guys who like these guys who are really, they've been there, they've done it, they've driven through it. We've all written and received multi-million-dollar grants, and we're looking to pass that information on, pass that institutional knowledge, pass that the personal knowledge on to the folks in our network, so that they are able to leverage us as resources and continue this work. Because as soon as we stop, then those folks who are making those decisions are going to have a reason to be able to say, well, we don't have anybody. We didn't have anybody to take the money. We didn't have anybody to lead the grants. We didn't have anybody to do all of these things that need to be done. I don't have enough staff and we don't want all of our money being wasted on governmental leaders. We want it to be into the programs and being more efficient and effective in how we run those programs.
Well, in our last few minutes together, we have 3 minutes left. What
Sure.
other, what else did you want to share with everyone for today about getting involved and, of course, how they can do so?
So some action steps. Let's talk about those things. So what's happening in your community? One of the first places to start is what's happening with your school committees. What's going on? We have a lot of issues across the country where superintendents are getting fired, where school committees are taking over what's going on. They control the budget. So similarly as the school committees, then it's what's happening in city government. We've had major funds that have come from the government that have been passed on to our cities. Primarily things like what's called the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. There's millions and millions of dollars that the government from 2001 Biden administration passed onto as a recovery from COVID, but also how we move our country forward. And so cities have been sitting on those pots of money. They're in some ways untargeted. They haven't been, it's basically what is needed to recover. So we put that out into the community. So making sure that you know where the sources of funds are coming from. So school committees, city council, of course, your state legislators, and all the different things that are going on with those folks. Right now, of course, we're worried about our federal elections and making sure that folks are understanding what's going on around voting, about registering to vote, about how that process is directly connected to funding education and resources to reduce risky behaviors for young people. And so we need to make sure that we are aware of all of those things, because all of those things then will eventually either get down to the grassroots or they will dry up. And we don't want them to dry up. We want to be able to be positioned to leverage it as best as possible. And the ways that we do that is by being as informed as possible.
Well, thank you again for being here. aces-network.com. And would you all like to share, of course, your all the forms of contact too?
Go ahead, gentlemen.
Yeah, so for me, it's ravenskeep1555@gmail.com, and the phone number is 847-701-5550.
Dr. Halston.
Great. It's Halston Enterprises LLC at gmail.com. And again, the number is 936-257-2557.
Thank you.
Okay,
And
well,
our
thank you so
primary
much.
information is aces-network.com. And my number is 617-610-5785. Feel free to reach out to us, any of us, at any of those contact places. We look forward to connecting with you.
Thank you so much. You have a fantastic day. And we back again next week, Dr.
Next week,
Thomas?
we are
All
back
right, good.
again.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Pleasure meeting you all and seeing you. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend, everyone.
You
Thanks
as well,
again.
Jill. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.